Welcome everyone to the 209 Journey podcast. I'm your host, Luis Urbano. And before we introduce our special guest tonight, let me remind you, if you are not following me on social media yet, please give me a follow. You can find the podcast social media on Facebook and Twitter at the 209 Journey. I also invite you to subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. Each podcast platform has different forms of subscription. If you're on Spotify, there is a follow button there. If you're on Apple Podcasts, there should be one as well. Other ones should have something similar. And if they don't, then make sure you follow the social media pages, as I always update those when I post a new episode. So let's go ahead and get started with tonight's episode interview with Jessica Lopez. So on the 209 Journey podcast today is a guest that I really should have probably had earlier, but I'm really excited to actually have her on now. She is actually the one who designed the new 209 podcast logo here on the show, and also has worked on other podcast logos for the other ones that I have as well. So really iconic logos. And I mean, I'm always really impressed when I see them and I get really good comments. So of course, had to have her on here so she could talk to us about how she got into graphic design and really even some inspiration for this logo as well. So let me welcome to the show tonight, Jessica Lopez. Welcome, Jessica, to the podcast. How's it going?
Hey, Luis. Thanks for having me here. I'm actually surprised you contacted me. I was like, he's never going to call me for one of these things. and then next thing you know, you messaged me and I was like, oh, I guess I am. I was like, I guess I'll just go with it.
I'm really glad you're on here. I'm glad you're on here. You know, like I always really wanted to have you on as well, because you, like I said earlier, right? You haven't just done the logo for this podcast, but you've done the logos for the other ones. And I always go to you to get me a logo, and it's really awesome. And, you know, I don't think we've ever even had the conversation of like how you got into graphic design and kind of your thought process behind all that. So, you know, I'm really excited to learn more about that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I've never really been questioned like how I got into it. I guess I'll just jump in then. So technically, I actually didn't want to major in graphic design. I really wanted to be an art major when I was looking at schools when I was in high school. So I went to Franklin High, class of 09. And during that time, I only had one art class. And then during that art class, there was a guest speaker from an art academy. And he came in and he was talking about all like the degrees you can get in art. And like all I knew at that time was that I was like, I'm going to get an art degree. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I was like, I'm going to get an art degree because that's what I want to do. And then eventually, like, you know, the whole process of like looking for schools and applying. So like I was going through that, and then I was like pretty much set that I wanted to go to the art academy in San Francisco. And I was like already talking to them, and I was already like pretty much down. I was like almost down to go. And then I kind of backed out because at the last minute I was like, what if I don't want to do this for the rest of my life? And I was like, what if I want to transfer, do something else? And then so I was like, no, I have to go to like a CSU or like a community college and like get my general education, and then I'll figure it out. And then so technically I applied to like a lot of different schools. I know you mentioned like, why didn't you pick San State or Sacramento? Well, to be honest, I didn't pick Sacramento because my brother was already going to go there. And I was like, no, I want to be different. So I was like, no, I'm going to pick a different school. So I ended up picking Fresno because that was technically one of the few ones I saw that said graphic design. Like it was like actually on the list of degrees. And I was like, I'll just do this and then I'll figure it out. And then I did end up getting into others. I don't even remember which schools I got into, but I got into obviously Fresno State. And then I got into, I don't know, maybe I'm kind of being kind of conceited, but I feel like everybody got into UC Merced because it was during the time that like it was brand new and like I felt like they just wanted people to be there. And I was like, no, I don't want to go to UC Merced. And then I also got the one I was really excited that I got into was like UC Santa Cruz, but then I was like, no, that's too expensive. And then so I went to the preview day at Fresno State and I was just like, this feels fine. And I was like, it feels good school. So I ended up picking that one. And then I pretty much I was telling my sister, I don't know why, but I didn't like inform anybody, just my mom and dad and like my siblings. I was like, hey, I'm going to Fresno State. And they were like, okay. And then I kind of just like dipped after graduation. And like, I feel like I didn't really tell any of my friends. So I feel kind of bad about that. That it's like haunts me a little bit because I was like, I'm just going to dip and leave. Yeah, so then I ended up, obviously, I graduated in '09, and then I ended up going to Fresno State. And then in Fresno State, my first year, I still didn't have an art class because it was like they were so packed with students. And I remember my first art class, I had to go and like, you know how like if you're not enrolled, you can still get enrolled after like a certain period, but you have to show up every like the first couple classes. Like you have to show that like you really want to take that class. So I pretty much did that for intro to drawing. Like I was there at 8 o'clock in the morning with my like easel and like my art supplies, and I was like, I'm really gonna take this art class because I really want to do art. And so pretty much from there, like eventually I started getting more of my classes. And then in the second semester of my freshman year, I ended up joining the graphic design club at Fresno State, which was like a really small club. And I was like, well, since I decided I wanted to do this major, I should probably start knowing people, just like, because everybody's always like, you need to get involved and like meet people in your major. So like, you have people to help you out. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna like actually like put myself in like a situation that I don't feel comfortable in because I'm not much of like joining clubs or anything like that. Like I never did that in high school. So I was like, no, this like I'm in college now. I have to like do all the like important stuff. So I like joined the club and it was actually really small. I think there was like maybe 6 people. And I pretty much like really got along with a couple of people there. I've still talked to a couple of people from that club. Yeah, I met Anna, I met Luciano, I met Carla. I still talk to them once in a while now, not as often. And then eventually, like I kept taking my art classes and my design classes. And then I want to say about like my junior year, Fresno State decided to like implement the BFA program, which is just like a fine arts degree, but it's like focused on one thing. So like there was 3 tracks, and it was like graphic design, multimedia, and illustration. And like by that time, I was still not like really confident in like my art skills or like drawing skills. So I was like, I'm not going into illustration because I was like, nah, I'm not good enough. And then like I was like, oh, I'll just do graphic design. Like people seem to be okay with my design work, so I'm just gonna keep going. And then I pretty much applied for the graphic design track, and then I got in, and that's where like I met my like group of graphic designers. That's where I met Bianca. Well, technically I met her before, but we both ended up going to the same track. And that's where I met Bianca, and I met a whole ton of other people. I'm not going to list them off because there are a lot. But yeah, then after that, Bianca and I pretty much were like we were in the club, we were in the track. And then by the end, we nominated her to be in charge of our senior show. Yeah, she was in charge of a senior show. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to like help you out in whatever you need. I'm like here for anything. And then, so yeah, we did our senior show in 14. And then, yeah, that was my college, a summary of my college career. But yeah, I met a lot of designers and illustrators during that time. It was just like a fun group of people that I really like being a part of. So like by the time I graduated, I was like super enthusiastic of like getting a job. So I just like applied everywhere. I was like, I don't care where I get a job. I'll just throw my applications everywhere. And like I was pretty like I was like, I don't know. I know a lot of people like after they graduate, they're like scared they're not gonna get a job. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what I was sniffing. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get a job somehow, somewhere. And then eventually I finally got a call back from Never Boring, or the agency we met.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the summer of 2014. And then after that, I was with them all the way to the last year in September. So I was with them like for 7 years. Yeah, and that's where we met. I think a little bit we met like at the end of my years over there. We weren't, yeah. So I know I'm like one of the older members. That's how I feel like most people remember me. But yeah.
Probably one of the older members, but me and you are the same age, so and I think I might even be older too. When's your birthday?
Are you older? I thought you were younger than me.
Wait, when's your birthday?
I'm October 9. I know you're an October baby.
I'm 5 years older than you, so
what?
So technically, I was the oldest of the not of the group, but yeah.
Okay. I think I just felt really old when I was there. I was always like, I've been here years. You guys, it's like because everybody would like come up to me and they're like, "Oh, how do you like find this file?" And I'll be like, "Oh, just give me a second. I'll find it for you." Or like, "Oh, I can't connect my computer to the printer," and I'm like, "That's fine. I know how to connect a computer." I think I just felt old because I was the go person there. But yeah, so I was there for a while. Learned a lot there.
Well, were there any interesting moments? Because I mean, like you said, right? I met you till like your last part of Never Boring, right? But I'm sure in your first couple of years, there were really interesting stories that you kind of went through, right? With clients that were, really happy, and you seeing your work in like places that like you couldn't even believe that your work was being shown there. Like, can you tell us some of those stories of like some of those moments and just favorite moments while you're making all these logos and just graphic designs?
Yeah. So one of my first, I always remember my first project. It was for, I guess I'm gonna say it. They technically hired the Modesto agency, and I was the designer. It was for Save Mart Cares. So it's like their foundation, like I think like donation foundation, something like that. I know I should probably remember, but it was literally like 7 years ago.
That's what it was. Yeah, I remember actually having I think there was like a card or something that they would donate part of your purchase and all that. So yeah, I remember that. I think I remember the logo too.
Yeah, like it has a heart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that was pretty much my first logo job at the agency. Like I like sat down and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna work on this logo," and like the client has looked at all these options, but like it's just not hitting. They're just not liking it, and I was like, "Okay, whatever. Yeah, I'll do that." And then I like just started doodling and working on it, and then like the first couple renditions of it, they were like they like loved it, and they're like, "We're going with this one." And then yeah, so it was like my first actual like logo that a client was like, "Oh my god, we love it, we like your work." So I was like, "Oh my god!" And I remember the first time I saw it was I saw it on like an envelope, and I got so excited because it was just a regular envelope, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's the logo I made!" But like now I see it like everywhere, like mostly in the Gala Center, like other big places. So that was the first logo I made at the agency. But I think one of the ones that like a lot of people know that live in the area, obviously, is the Golden Valley logo. That one was also another client that was I was given a small project for them. It was just like, "Hey, we need you to do a billboard for them." And my senior designer at that time, he was like, he was like, I don't know what, he was pretty much like, oh, you can help me out with this because like they were just not loving the ideas they were presenting. So I was like, sure, I'll work on it. And then that one, I was just like one billboard, and like I pretty much cleaned it up because they always had so much copy. So I cleaned up their billboard, and then I put a little like hills on it with like a gradient and like a bar, and like I just pretty much took their like slogan and like I just placed it on it, and they were like, "Oh, we love that look. We're just gonna go with that." And I swear, after a while, I was kind of annoyed because I was like, "I did this already. You guys need like something new." But like once the client likes something really like a lot, they kind of stick with it until like it's like played out. So that one is stuck, and then eventually the agency was like, you know what, they like your work, so we're gonna just give you that client. So it's gonna be you're in charge of everything, like whatever they need when they like contact us is gonna be on you. So eventually, like the more I worked with them, the more like they were like, oh, like a lot of the work I was doing was really cleaned up, and it was like very well. It was like just at that time, I felt like a lot of people were moving towards just cleaner look, like not like a ton of like overlays and like not like a ton of tech. Like everything was just cleaned up a lot. And then so eventually they were like, you know what, we need a new logo. Like our logo is just too old. It's like we need to update it. And then at that time, they were like, yeah, we're like 100% that we want to do something different, like completely like 180 from what they had. I don't know if you remember the old logo.
Yeah, I remember even going there when they had the old logo. So yeah, it was really 90s. Like they needed a good refresh already.
Yeah, like it was very bulky, and it was just very like, yeah, like you said, it was really 90s. So like obviously they needed like a refresher on it. So they were like super 100% committed to like redoing everything and doing all their new colors and like pretty much a rebrand on it. And I remember that logo. I worked with one of my with other designer Katie, and we like went through different ideas with that one. We had like hills, hearts, hands, like everything we could think of Central Valley, because it was like we need to get this one to the point where like they like it. And then eventually I like looked back at my old school projects because we did something similar for like a community center. And then I looked at my old like projects and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just put it out there, this like icon I made like in school, in college, but like just change it up a little bit, and we'll just present it and see what they say. And then boom, that was the logo.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think there was like slightly tweaks to it that I had to do, but apart from that, they were like, yeah, let's go with that one. And then that's where like the real work started, because it was like you need to rebrand everything, buildings, brochures, IDs, vans, everything. Everything had to be rebranded. And so that was like, it was scary. It was like a scary challenge because it was like, I want to say maybe like 2-3 years after I graduated. So it was like kind of new to me. I was like, oh man, I've never done something like this big. And yeah, so like everybody in my house knows that I did that logo. So like every time we see it, they're like, oh, that is the logo Jessica made. And then I think one time because my sister ended up going to Stan State, and one time we dropped her off, but like we went to the store to get some groceries, and like it was like on a poster, I think, but it was like somewhere near a cashier. And then me and my sister were like, oh, look, there's the logo. And then my mom's like, do you want to take a photo next to it? I was like, no. I was like, why would I want a photo next to my logo? But yeah, so like, even though my parents and my well, like they kind of know what I do, but it's like so confusing to explain to people. But I mean, they've always been supportive of like, what I've been doing. I just think it's funny that people are like, oh yeah, just take a photo with it. I'm like, no, I'm okay. I've seen it for years, and like it's one of the ones where a lot of people are always like, "Oh, you worked on that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I did that." It's like it's gonna be like my thing, especially in the Central Valley, because it's like so known, and like they're literally. I forgot how many locations. The last time I worked with them, they were like at 26 locations. It's probably like more now. But yeah, that was one of the ones that I remember and that I was like really proud of, that I got a chance to like shift them into a totally different look. So that was like the whole big thing for me.
That was good. It was, like I said, it was much needed. And, it's like we need to, I always say this too every time I see an old logo, especially like here in the Valley. I'm like, someone needs to do a refresh on that. I don't care what they do, but just make it modern. I don't care how it looks like, but make it modern. So anytime anyone visits here, they can see that we're up to date. We're not like stuck in the 90s, like everyone might think.
Yeah, I think that's especially now though, like especially now how from when I started working, like when I started working, it was like, oh, just a simple logo to put like in your business cards and letterhead and like what your website. But like eventually now with like apps and like GIFs and TikToks and video and like it's just like you can make your logo into pretty much anything and you have to animate it and you have to make sure it's like there's so many ways it can look. There's so many good ways it can look and there's so many bad ways it can look. It's like you really have to like make sure your logo is updating with the times, because if not you're just going to be left looking like a dinosaur and like super fast, because like things that were popular like a year ago are like so outdated now.
Yeah, so it's like, have you found yourself having to do more updates on like logos or like than you would have like 7 years ago now?
Um, in a way, yes. The last couple of clients I had were remakes. Were updated ones that they definitely needed, because a lot of people, and I don't blame them, because like some like when you're starting a business, like sometimes thinking about, now it's important to think about your logo, but like back then I feel like people would be like, you know what, I'm just gonna type it out in Microsoft and be happy with it.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them for that, because it's like time is money and obviously you just need your logo out there. So like I don't blame them for like not investing in it, but it's definitely something I think people now who have smaller businesses like take notice, like, oh yeah, I need to invest on my brand and I need to like have this set before I even start launching anything, because obviously appearances now on social media are like so important with brands.
Yeah, it's crazy that people, just kind of put something together real quick and they're like, let's just go right at it, right to business, right? But part of it is brand recognition, right? And being able to actually recognize, right? If you see a car, that's the business, versus just seeing, like you said, just the Microsoft Word typed out and that's it, because it won't even stand out, right? You won't even remember what it was like a second later.
Yeah. There's too everything's so fast paced that like now you really have to like take into consider, it's like a new element to your business plan to even be slightly successful. It's just making sure that you look clean and professional and like because I like if you're scrolling through social media, like you literally have seconds to look at something and decide whether or not you're going to buy something, or if you even want to call that business. Because yeah, I guess slight insert, but make sure you guys update your logos and make sure you upload like not pixelated images, because people obviously notice when you have something that's not that great. So yeah, I did that logo. How many logos do I have? I remember I was counting them and you noticed, because I was like hoping to eventually reach 100 logos in my lifetime. But I forgot how many I made. But
like you're close to that number. You should be. I would.
No. the good thing about the agency was that I got to work on a lot of things apart from logos.
Mm-hmm.
Like I worked on a lot of local magazines. I worked on Progress, which was for the Modesto Chamber. I worked for Contentment Health, which was a lifestyle magazine, and then I worked on I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm going to say it, the Gallo Center magazine. Yeah, so I also got like to work on a lot of publications, and that for me was, I think, my biggest challenge because I was never that invested into publications until like obviously I had to do it because it was part of our job, and then it was that one was like really difficult for me to get into and actually like feel like I was producing good enough work that I was like, oh yeah, this is great. But it was like a lot of work. And the good thing about some of those magazines was that it was monthly. So I always got a chance to like, oh, I can improve the next month and I'll get better. And then I don't know. I don't know if it was just the timing of things, but I also ended up making a rebrand of Progress, which was the Modesto Chamber one. I also ended up making a rebrand of that one, like a whole different layout, a whole different look for them. And yeah, I guess now that I talk about it, I'm like, wow, you really did a lot of rebranding.
That's good. You helped clean up the valley. Like I said, we needed it. So, and we still need it too. So, I mean, I know you probably still see some, and you're like, you're like just shrugging, seeing something. You're like, oh no, like why don't they change it? Just come on.
There's a couple businesses that I'm always like, well, they might need like a slight cleanup, but I mean, being in, this is what a lot of people tell me. They always think I'm from Modesto. When I was working in Modesto, they were always like, oh, we thought you lived in Modesto and you were raised here. And I was like, no, I'm from Stockton. I just work here. Like, so a lot of people thought I like lived in Modesto, but like being around there and being around like the creative community, like I've noticed a lot of like people come up that I'm just like, wow, they're like super talented and they're like really pushing for like businesses and like community stuff to be like super I wouldn't say it's like super awesome, but it's like I'm just like really impressed by all their work because I'm just like, wow, like I remember coming in here and like there was like so much stuff that I was like, oh, that's kind of lame. But like I think now with everything, a lot of people are like learning like the value of like having a good brand and looking good and making sure like you like look presentable in social media. So yeah, I don't want to say like everything in like the valley is like ugly because it's not true. There's like a lot of talented people, but I just feel like we always end up getting like, I don't know how to say it. It's just because we're so close to like the Bay Area, and obviously the Bay Area has like a ton of like other talented people and like so many like innovative stuff. So like I always feel like we're always looked less than slightly. Mm-hmm. But like there's like a ton of talented people, and obviously working at the agency, I definitely met like a ton of people that I'm like, wow, I'm like, you guys are like super awesome, and I'm just like, I think given the chance, like people can really produce like great work anywhere. Like you like don't have to be in the Bay Area or you don't have to be in a big city to like make good design nowadays. You can be in the valley and make awesome designs. Is my opinion.
And pay a lot less for rent too. So
yeah,
there's where we laugh at them. But yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
really expensive everywhere too. But if people don't want any traffic and they want to pay $100-$200 less,
yeah,
they could be here.
Yeah, as a person who commuted for like 7 years, yeah, that kind of gets draining so fast.
Oh yeah. I remember when I found out you're from Stockton. I was like, wow, it adds up. Like and when you were there for a long time, I was like, wow, they really need to help you out and make you remote a couple of days.
Yeah, it was an interesting. Well, I think my like I said, when I like graduated college, I was like just enthusiastic about getting a job. I was just like jumping everywhere. Like if someone was like, "Are you sure you want to commute?" I was like, "Heck yeah, I'll commute. I'll be here like on the spot. I don't care if I have to wake up early and commute." And then eventually, once I was like working for like I think on my 6th year, I was like, "Oh, I'm so over commuting."
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm good. I think I can do this at home." And then, yeah, so yeah, I didn't even mention that eventually, like at 7 years, I like finally left the agency, and then I like pretty much decided to go freelance and pretty much start my own thing and start in the garage and with just my Mac and my hopes and dreams.
That's all. I mean, great things start in a garage, so that's good.
Yeah, I like to tell myself that a lot. I'm like, good things happen, and then you never know. But yeah, so now I'm currently freelancing. I was helping, like I mentioned, another great designer from Modesto. Her name is Jessica Ringer. We got in contact before I left the agency, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to help me out with this project or with this client?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll help out." And it was for Modesto and so I helped with a couple things with that, and then I also keep in contact with a lot of people from the agency. I don't know if you ever met Harold. He was part of the sign department, and eventually he did function graphics.
Oh, okay, no,
I'm giving a shout out to function graphics because they're amazing. I'm just gonna say that now. So yeah, so I kept in contact with him, and he like whenever they need help, I'm always like, yeah, I'm down to like create artwork for them when they need to. And then obviously you contact me when you need a logo for your podcast, which I'm like, oh wow, another one. I'm like, man, he is really busy with the podcast. Yeah. I'll say this though. I think my favorite one that I've made for you has to be the Sonic one. Because that one, I had it in my vision. I had it like this is how it's gonna be. And I just didn't think it was gonna turn out that great. But I'm just like so in love with how like the whole thing worked out with that one. So that one's probably one of my favorite ones.
That's awesome. And that one is probably the one that most people have seen because I mean, we do a live show with that one and just people going on our website and all that. And it's reached high numbers. It's actually my most popular podcast show, which actually just had one episode past the 1,000 listen mark, which I was really impressed with just one episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not a big fan. Like I'm not that into it, but I was like who was my critiquer for that one is my brother, my younger brother, because he likes Sonic. He's like the games. So obviously, like before I even sent it to you, I was like, is this correct? And I was like, I need your approval before I send it off. And he was like, yeah. So yeah, that was probably one of my favorites just because I liked how the overall look of it looks. Not that I'm saying I don't like our other podcast logos we've created, because I like them all. But that one, I just feel like it's one of my favorites out of the bunch. Yeah, so that one is probably, yeah.
I'd say it's my favorite probably too out of all of them too. Like, they all turned out amazing, but if I had to pick one, I would probably pick that one too. And just how great it turned out. And I know we did more variations of it too, and we keep coming back to you for more things. And it's cool because I think you made it to a point where you could actually change some elements and it could still seem like it's the part of the same group, right? But it's its own thing as well. So it's kind of cool when you have a logo that you could just swap things out, but it still maintains like the identity, right, of the group. So
yeah, I was like, I actually eventually had, because obviously my Mac ran out of memory, so I eventually had to I recently had to take all my stuff that I had in my Mac and like put it in a external drive. And I was like looking through them. I was like, wow, we did a lot. I was like, we worked a lot on these. So yeah, that one was fun to make. I guess another thing that that I like as a designer was like really proud of and like excited was two publications, not publications. I guess they're publications. So one of our clients, her name was Lillian. She wanted pretty much someone to help her design her book of all, like she used to write, I don't remember which newspaper she used to write a column in, but she eventually wanted to take her columns and make them into a book. And I helped her out through a couple of months. And then eventually at the end, she like left me. I was like at the end they always leave like thank yous at the end of a book
Oh
to
yeah.
all like the people. So like eventually, like she eventually put me, I think I was one of the last ones.
Oh.
She like thanked me. And I was just really excited because I was like, wow, my name is actually in a printed book. So this is gonna be like gonna last forever. And then another book I also helped out was for the Delicato family,
Oh,
which
okay.
is the winery. If you're driving down 99, is the winery down there. I helped them create. They have like a family cookbook, and I remember they were looking for a designer because they just needed to wrap up the book and get it to the printer. So I was pretty much one of the people that helped out with that. And she was so happy that she also put me in her book as a thank you. And I'm also like, my name's printed. So those are like the two things I'm like super happy to like. I mean, there's a ton of Jessica Lopez out there, but like at least I know that's my name on that book. So I think those are two of like the highlights I always remember about my like time at the agency. I guess right now I am like slowly starting to have different clientele. So I don't have like a logo that I'm like, oh my God, like this happened just me, just Jessica Lopez. It hasn't happened yet. I mean, I'm manifesting like to the world that maybe I get like a big client now, but either way, whatever clients I have right now, I've been having a lot of fun with them. Um, one of my friends from Fresno State, who I also met through the club, I think, or we had a class together. I don't remember. He's a designer over there at Fresno, and he's also like been sending me clients of people that like need logos, and like I've been working on those. I'm excited for a newer one that just came in for some Mexican inspired candles. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. I've never heard of well, at least in our area, right? Mexican inspired candles, but I mean that sounds really great. That's a really good business idea. Whoever whoever that is,
Yeah.
shout out to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to make some bank with it. So I'm excited for that. I mean, we still haven't started, but we've like been exchanging ideas and like inspiration um, with that work. And that's pretty much what I guess lately I've been doing a lot of logos because it's like the easiest thing people like understand at first. They're like, oh yeah, I need a logo for like my new business. And then eventually after you're done with your logo, you realize, oh yeah, I need like flyers, business cards, all the collateral stuff. So yeah.
Nice. Well, since you were mentioning the podcast logos earlier, I gotta ask, and also for all the listeners, so they can also learn the story of the logo. Can you kind of walk us through more of like the 209 Journey podcast logo and like the elements on it, and just kind of the different inspirations that you had to create it?
Yeah. So for this one, I wasn't 100% sure you were going to ask me to do this one. I was like, I'm not sure. But I already kind of had an idea that I like, because obviously with the zero, you have like so much space to put something in it. So I was like, oh, definitely I'm going to put something in the zero. So that one literally just started with the idea of a microphone. At first I was like, maybe it should like have like a hand holding a microphone, like giving a voice to people. But then I was like, I don't really like that as much. And then obviously we were talking about somehow making sure that this was in a circle for stickers, and like, so that played a lot. So I wanted to make sure that everything could be enclosed in a circle. So that's why the shape was pretty much already set by that standard. And then funny thing, that Modesto arc I've been having in my files for years because I made it once.
Oh.
And I was like, I have a feeling I'm going to use this arc again. And sure enough, I've been using the same arc. So like, I know people sometimes don't want to make vectors, but you know, it helps out, especially if you work like in a small community. People always want to use the same like icons and items into their work. So I always keep the Modesto arc in my files because I'm like, someone's gonna want it eventually. So that one was easy, obviously, to have. And then I think the other parts was like trying to get everyone, because I ended up looking up our map of our county, or I guess our counties of who's in the 209 area. And I was like, man, there's so much like stuff we can add. Obviously, the port from Stockton, but then Stockton has the University of Pacific. But then I was like, I don't want us to just put one college because then obviously there's Stan State. But then I'm like, what can I add for Stan State? And I'm like, well, ducks.
There's a lot of ducks, yeah.
I was like, ducks is all I remember. So I'm sorry to Turlock people. I wasn't able to add everything into this. I guess eventually, if they decide to put a landmark, we can add it to the logo because there's obviously space for it. Obviously, Ripon has that tower thing that I saw every year. I used to see it driving, so obviously I had to put that in there. And then I think this one's from Oakdale, the building on the right, I think. Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong later, or if people want to be mad at me. Okay.
No, I think I've seen it. Yeah. For a second, I thought it was the waterfront for Stockton, but I get, it's in Oakdale too, though.
Yeah, I think I know I have a picture somewhere. Yeah, so I just pretty much looked up images and I was like buildings that I liked, and like, because obviously you want to make sure to enclose it, and I wasn't I like tried to make the mountains around us, but then I was like, they're not that exciting. They're not like super big, or they're not like super edgy where like, oh, there's a cool shape on it. So I kind of took inspiration from I think it was the San Joaquin Council logo. They also have like a really like a very simple mountain. I think I took inspiration from that. And then all the other elements, I just had fun with it because I was like, I wanted to have cursive. And obviously, I feel like this one also works, like obviously the white and green, and just having the text being green was also fun. So that was literally my inspiration for this one. Obviously, it was more cohesive when I was working on it. Because usually for logos, I usually like having my inspiration like all in a folder. Like I just dump everything that I'm like, this is what I want. And this is like the inspiration for it. The images I like, even colors. But for this one, I think you already had these colors and we were pretty much going to stick with those. So that one was also, you pretty much made me have an easy job. You already had the colors. Obviously already knew it was going to be 209 on it. So I already had like already set things, parameters to work in. So it was pretty much just making sure it looked clean enough, because obviously podcasts need to be fun. But yeah, I mean, we obviously went back and forth because I also did other renditions of it that were square, but we ended up going with the circle, which I like. And so I like, I'm sorry, I'm like apologizing to Logan. I'm like, I'm sorry I didn't pick you as like my favorite, but I've been working on a couple other ones. But yeah, this one was fun to make. I think this one was not as difficult as the other ones we've worked on, because like I already had elements that I wanted to use before. Because I was like in the back of my head, I was like, maybe he'll contact me for this. So I'm just gonna start thinking what could be on this logo. And sure enough, and then you messaged me and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I have an idea already. You know, I'm like your go-to designer. So I'm always like, let's see what other podcasts we're gonna work on.
Watch, there's probably still going to be more in the works, even though I've kind of like put the brakes on creating any more until like I can actually really be able to record as much as I want to for all of them. But I might actually reach out to you for other projects related to the podcast, because I do merchandise now, and you've probably seen your logo and more things. So trust me, your work is going to keep being seen just everywhere. And those stickers that I print for most of the podcasts that I do, they're being shared just like all across. And this 209 Journey podcast now has stickers as well. So I just made stickers for these, and eventually they're going to make their way around the valley is my goal. But I haven't given out much yet, but I'm going to start like going around and just sharing around the logo. So a lot of people are going to see it in the area. So I'm just saying, be prepared to get people contacting you, especially now that they know that you made the logo and all that.
I mean, I know, like I always feel, I guess it would be kind of guilty, because everybody's like, every time someone asks, like, don't you have like a passion for design? And I was like, yeah, there's passion for it, obviously, but like I think I've worked in agencies, and I think I didn't mention it to you, but I also did in-house for like 1 year. I worked for the Fresno State dorms. Well, I think they're like University Courtyard. So they have dorms, obviously. And I was part of their marketing team for like a year. And that one was like my only in-house experience. And that one was also kind of fun. That was just a little bit more, pretty much just their branding and making event flyers and stuff for them. So that one, yeah. Shout out to Bianca. She also helped me get that job.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. She helped me in that job because she had that job, and then she eventually got a job at the health center at school. And then she contacted me and was like, hey, do you want to work here? You can like turn in your application. And I got interviewed and I got it. So that was like my first official design job.
Nice. Well, yeah. Shout out to her, because she's been
around. Shout out to Bianca. She's literally my go-to critiquer. And like I said, another amazing, talented person that I'm like, unless you like live under a rock, you wouldn't call her talented. But to me, she's probably one of my inspirational people that I'm like, yeah, she's totally awesome.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear that. One last thing that I want to talk to you about, because you mentioned that you were born and you grew up in the Stockton area, and you're actually the first guest that I have from Stockton. And I know I'm gonna have probably a lot more, but you're the first, right? You're like representing right now. But eventually my goal is actually to have at least one person from every city, town in the 209. And some of the smaller ones I'm gonna have a harder time, but I'm gonna find someone, I'm sure. But my goal is to at least have one person from every town at some point, to be able to say, like, you know, we have representation from all the areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask you, walk us through, like, how was it growing up in Stockton? Like, how was that for you? And how has it changed? Because I know it's changed a lot since you grew up there.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Let's see. I guess I never really, I know Stockton gets a lot of bad rep, but to me, I mean, it's the place where I was born and raised. So like I have obviously like a worn spot for Stockton. Like I don't mind that people might not think it's the best place, or like obviously there's a lot of issues with it, but obviously I grew up here, so I've met a lot of amazing people here in Stockton, and I didn't realize it until like obviously I moved out to Fresno, and I came back and I was like, wow, there's like there's just so many talented people that I met. So I feel like I jumped around in Stockton. So I technically lived near Edison High School, which is, oh my, west, yeah, near the west side, I think. I'm an art major, so I don't know my geography. It's the west. I'm going to say the west. Southwest. So I grew up in near that area, Edison High, and I was there till like third grade. I'm in McKinley Elementary School. I don't know. Maybe since you said we're about the same age, but did your guys' school have like the half English and half Spanish classes, or was that just the me thing?
No, I actually because I grew up over near Patterson and like a small charter school, and it was like that. So for my first like
Okay.
4 grades, yeah, until I moved out back to Modesto, and it was not like that over here. But growing up over there, it was like that, and it's the best thing that could have happened to me. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was like the best thing to happen because I was bad at both English and Spanish. Like I just remember getting both. Like, you know how we have like spelling tests? I was bad at both. So, but I just remember, I think it was just, yeah. So it was a lot of, there's a lot of Mexican American kids over there with me. So I feel like it was a pretty cheerful childhood. I mean, it was the best we could do at the time. And then eventually we ended up moving more up north. I guess closer to Pacific University for a little while. I guess. So we moved over there for a little bit. And then after that, we ended up finally settling closer to Franklin High School. And we've pretty much been here. How old is my sister? She's like 23. So we've been here like 22 years. So then I ended up going to Elmwood Elementary. And then from there, I eventually ended up going to Fremont Middle School. And then I was in Franklin High School till I graduated. Like I mentioned, I didn't really join any clubs. I was a very awkward kid, I guess I would say. I was just mostly focused on like, we need to get, because there's prerequisites of like how to get into college, because that was like a big thing at the time. That everybody was like, you need to go to a 4-year college. Like that's the only way you're going to be able to get a job. The only way you're going to be able to survive was like a big thing back then. I don't know if it is now, but when I was in school, it was like, no, that's like the only way you're going to get a decent job, which is not true, obviously. But I'm not against people going to college either. Like I loved my experience, so I'm not going to hate on it. So like I was very focused on like pretty much getting all my classes done and going. I think during that time, obviously, MySpace is a big thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wish I would have learned more coding though. I know a lot of people learn coding from MySpace, but I didn't. All I learned was how to edit photos because I had like a very like bootleg version of like a photo editing. And like that's literally where I think I did a couple of business cards for my dad in that photo editing program.
That was your start right there. You're like,
I know, I didn't realize that was my start, but I just like really, now that I think about it, they were really crappy.
Are they somewhere? Do you know? Like,
I mean, no, I don't have them.
You're like, no,
maybe my dad has like old cards. But yeah, they're like, oh man, they're so bad. Now that I think about it. So yeah, so I think that's pretty much where I started. Like I said, my goal or like my ambition at that time was like I wanted to be in art class, and just be an art major. And then somehow I ended up being a graphic designer, which I mean, there's art in that, obviously, and there's like a certain talent, I guess would be a word to use. But yeah, I mean, now, like, obviously now when I have free time, I do my drawings when I can, when I have the motivation to do them. But yeah, I mean, Stockton, obviously, obviously it shaped me because it was like I met a lot of people during that time, clearly. And they just, I mean, they've always been so kind and like so supportive. Cause usually, like, obviously in movies, you always like, they're always like, oh, art's never gonna like lead to anything. Like, art's just for like a hobby. Like, obviously, you're not gonna make money out of art. And that pretty much was not my experience. Like, a lot of people were like super kind and like, yeah, you should, like, they were like just really into like, you should put your work out and like your work's going to be seen eventually. So yeah, so I'm pretty grateful about that. That I've always had a lot of support with my family and like with friends and people I've met. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And definitely, I mean, I feel like you can't be a graphic designer without having like the passion for art, right? Because I'm sure like your inspiration really derives from art fundamentals, right? And you need to have like a good eye for art to design something good.
Oh
Or
yeah.
if you don't,
Okay.
then you put something like I do, right? If I just put something together real
Yeah.
quick.
Well, I mean, okay, this is I don't know. This is my like personal opinion, but I've always thought that everybody's creative. Like,
Mhm.
maybe they don't have like the skill, but I've always been very like, oh, everybody's creative, you just have to like put yourself into like making the stuff. But
Mhm.
obviously, so like some people have like more patience to like actually sit down and learn and take time to like learn things that would help you be a better designer or be a better artist. But I've always been like a person that's like, oh yeah, everybody's creative. I remember at school, um, one of my friends mentioned, she was like very like, oh, some people have it and some people don't have the eye for design. Like, she
Oh,
was really like that. She was
oh,
just like, some people have it, some people don't. And I didn't believe her for like the longest time. I was just like, no, I like, everybody has like slight taste for
mhm.
like good design. So like I always never believed that, some people are more like they have the eye for design. I've always been like, oh, anybody can just pick it up. But slowly I learned in the agency world that my thoughts were not true. There's a couple people that I'm like, you definitely don't, but it's fine. Yeah. Some people I'm like, yeah. But I still think we're all creative, and I still support like anybody if they wanted to learn to do design or draw, like they could put the effort and go into it. Because I mean, sometimes it's just fun.
Mhm.
Like, it's just fun doing things, and I know some people are like, "Oh, this is so boring," but to me, it's fun. I have a lot. I think the part I enjoy, obviously, the most is like the initiation, which is like I like literally sit down and like sketch out my idea. I just sit down and like I just draw like whatever comes out of my head, whatever doodle I do,
Mhm.
whatever comes out, I just put it in a piece of paper for like 30 minutes or an hour if I have time. And out of that, like obviously we get ideas and like you could just build off of that. Lately I've been wanting to take more time into like actually sketching out some ideas because during the agency days, I obviously time is money over there. So I didn't really get as much time as I would like, but it also helps you like just start quick thinking with it,
Mhm.
which I'm not a fan of, but I know it helps some creatives when they have like just limited time to like think of things. But that I think every creative has different styles of working.
Yeah, no, that's true. I like the way you say it, that everyone has some sort of creativity in them, right? I mean, some like you, right? It's
Mhm.
more on the art, graphic design. Others might be creative in other aspects, right? But
Yeah.
much as your friend was like yes or no, it's like, well, yeah, there's everyone has something. It's just we all have different talents, and once you find that talent, I feel like it's really special, right? And you feel really good, right? You're like, okay, great. I finally found what I'm good at. And I know that's one thing that we would struggle in college, right? It's like you're trying to figure out what am I really good at and what am I really going to enjoy. And when you find it, you just, I feel like you're not really working, right? Because you enjoy the work that you
Mhm.
do. And that's what everyone wants to have in life, right? So,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we I know that's another topic that sometimes it like irritates some people because like obviously art is always seen as like something that doesn't require a lot of work. That they're like, oh, you just like took a
mhm.
couple minutes to do it and you got an A. But like it definitely did not take I mean, some people did take a couple minutes, but they're just naturally talented, obviously. And other people, like myself, I obviously still have to like take my time and work at it. And there's just a lot of other stuff that goes into it. Then I think people just because they see the end result and they think it's like a simple thing they can do,
Mhm.
they kind of devalue it. But it takes skill and time to learn all this stuff. And I mean, I still need a lot to learn. Obviously, like I mentioned, like there's so many things that are changing that obviously just being a print designer isn't going to cut it anymore in
Mhm.
this world because like everything's going digital and everything's being pretty much printing is going like supposedly it's dead and some people are like no it's not dead, it's not dead yet, and I'm like well I don't know. Sometimes it feels like it is, but some people are like adamant that it's not dead yet, but I guess time will tell how it will all work out.
It's a little alive in the valley. In the Bay Area, I don't know, but at least here in the valley, it's still a little bit,
Yeah,
just a
well,
little
yeah.
bit. Uh,
The Valley's like, no, we're gonna keep this industry going.
yeah, we're gonna keep the newspapers, the magazines, everything. You're good.
Yeah.
So you're,
Do people still get newspapers? I don't know. I never got it. So
I haven't seen any newspapers or people get delivered. I'm sure they probably
uh
still do. It's just maybe a lot of people don't subscribe to them as much. I
yeah.
mean, I've seen them in the boxes that you see in the city, but
Mm,
I haven't seen anyone, or at least like the cars actually throw the newspapers like I used to. But
mhm.
I'm sure they probably still have them because there's still people that would
Yeah.
probably pay, and they probably just charge a lot more than they used to if you want
Yeah.
a personal delivery. But
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I just heard from I'm not gonna mention who. I just heard that apparently there's like a shortage of paper too, which is crazy right now. Cause
Oh.
yeah. I didn't even know because like I told you, like nowadays, because I'm freelancing, a lot of my work is like just digital. And I haven't had to like do a print project in like a couple of months. So like I was just like, oh, I was surprised. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that because like everything's digital now.
Wow. So that might be what turns the valley into a more digital valley. Then okay, so
Who
I
knows?
retract everything I said. I
Who
think we're not gonna
knows?
have paper anymore.
Yeah, who knows?
Wow.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, well, one last thing. I wanted to kind of give you a chance to give a shout out to anyone that you want to give a shout out to, or any else that you wanted to say as well that you haven't said yet.
Oh, shout! I feel like I already gave all the shout out. There's a lot of people I would think, to be honest.
You could do self promo as well, please, for anyone who wants some freelance work.
Oh yeah, I guess I'm not really good at. See, the thing about actually like the thing about like the community in the valley is that I've met so many people that like somehow I've like been able to stay afloat in my freelance stuff because like I always there's always someone contacting me and I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, yeah, I'll work. So I haven't really had to do self promotion, which is kind of terrifying to me because I was trying to be more consistent with my Instagram, but obviously I got work, so I had to do that instead of like trying to promote myself. So I'm like really thankful for like all the people that like sent out for giving me work because I got bills to pay too, you know.
No.
But yeah, I guess if anybody's looking for a designer, you can definitely check out my website. It's jessicalpzdesign.com or my Instagram, which I am going to update. I'm not saying I'm totally forgetting about my Instagram. It is just Jess Lopez _design. And there you can see some of the stuff that I've worked on. I wish I could tell you about all the stuff I worked on. There's a lot. I was thinking about it because obviously you messaged me about doing the podcast, and I was like, how long have I been designing? And I was like, it's been like almost close to 10 years. And I was like, I'm like, now I feel old.
Oh yeah.
I was like, now I feel old because now I'm like, wow, I've been doing this for 10 years. And I mean, if you're in the Central Valley, you've probably seen at least one thing I made, I feel like either Golden Valley, Gallo Center. I did some stuff for Domo, which is the downtown Modesto. I don't know if you heard about them. You probably have.
Yeah. And even if you're not from the Valley, right? If you're just driving down 99, there's a couple of billboards that have your logo, and Golden Valley is one of those too. So even people who aren't from here have probably already seen it.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I saw some going towards Tracy the other day. Well, obviously still 209, right?
Yeah.
Is it still 209? Yeah. So yeah, I was just like, wow, it's all the way over here. Yeah. So I mean, that's as much self-promo I'm gonna make for that.
You know, but one day I feel like you need to write a book with all like the logos and like the story behind each one. Like,
oh man,
like
I wonder if I could remember everything because some of them I'm just like, oh my god. Yeah, so if you guys actually check out my website, whoever's listening, I actually have a section. If you go down, I think it's like I put make your mark, and it's literally mostly all my logos I've made. So it's like a big I took inspiration out of I visited MHD group for one of I don't know if you ever heard of Mode. I think it was Mode. Or is it MODE, which was like Modesto Design. It was like a collective of people. It was obviously pre-COVID times where we were like, they tried to do, it was during the same like architect week where like they did like studio tours or agency tours. And we went to MHD and I remember walking in and literally when you turn on their wall, they had pretty much all their logos like framed just on the wall. And I was just like, I can do that. I was like, I have enough logos for a wall. And then I like started putting them together. And then eventually I was like, I'm just going to put them on my website because obviously I don't have office space. So it's just my little wall of logos for myself. So, oh, another one I didn't even mention it now that I'm scrolling down. It was Stanislaus County Parks and Recreation. So if you guys have ever gone to the parks, I did that logo. Yeah, that one was another fun one. That one was also a surprise. I can go on about it, Luis, honestly. Because that one wasn't even a rebrand. They just wanted a logo. And then I remember at that time, one of my coworkers at the agency was like, oh, I was expecting them to do something ugly with like wood and like wood texture. And I was like, and he was like, but no, you ended up giving them this like geometric logo and it's all modern. So now I don't know what to do with it. And I was just like so confused because I was like, I thought that was what they wanted. But yeah, so that was one of the ones I'm proud of because obviously it's one of the bigger clients that I did.
Yeah, and it's got different elements, right? And the representations of Stanislaus County, right? So it makes it stand out so much. So yeah, I agree. That one was really great.
That was one of the fun ones too. Yeah, there's a lot of logos that I've made that I'm surprised because most of the time sometimes I like, obviously I talk to the client and I always end up trying to give them obviously what we talked about. And then I always have like, sometimes I just have an idea and I'm like, I'm just going to just add it to see what they say. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't like it, well, I liked it. So
Yeah.
it
You're like, I'll
works
still
for
have
me.
it. I'll keep it in the
Yeah,
library.
they'll still have an option. But yeah. So go ahead and check out my work. I have that up there. Obviously, your logo stuff, your podcast stuff is here too.
Yeah. They're all around there too, and you could see the 209 Journey alternative logo is what I call it.
Oh,
There's other ones.
it was. Wait, where is it at? Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Take a look at that. And obviously, I have all my other stuff there, other jobs that I've created that I'm proud of, that I've done. I wish I could put everything I did, but obviously, that was a lot of stuff. And
No.
I
7 years,
feel
I'm
like
sure.
at some point, certain people would be upset that I would put all that work up.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I could see.
Because obviously it's not like I don't own it. So it's just stuff I worked on. But yeah. So, I mean, if anybody's interested in a designer, I'm available. If anybody's interested in being a designer, then good luck. It's a fun journey. And obviously, if you guys want to go into a school that offers it, it's cool. If you guys want to YouTube it and like take time to learn it, it's always an awesome option too.
Yeah, there's something for everyone, right? You could go the college route or you could just the self-taught route, right? And both of them, you could be an amazing designer either way. So
yeah,
it's good, right? It's good to know that, right? That it's one of those careers that both options help, right? Or you could just teach yourself. It might take a longer time, but
well, I mean,
yeah.
obviously, I think I just went the school route because I wasn't sure what I was doing at the time. But I mean, the thing, like I said, the thing I loved about it was that I pretty much was involved in like the design community there, and everybody was super supportive. I remember, quick story. I remember I was part of the club, and I remember I did a poster at the time. When I did the poster, I didn't have any of the programs, so I just did it quickly at the library. And then eventually one of my professors saw it, and he was in charge of the club, and he was like, hey, you need to like come to my office to talk about the poster. And I was like, oh my God, why? It was just a silly poster I made. It wasn't even that big of a deal. And then he literally, like, when I went to meet him, he like literally sat next to me in a classroom, and he was like, okay, this is how you have to use the program. And then he showed me how to fix all the mistakes I made on the poster. And then for some reason that's like always stuck in my head. And I'm just like, yeah. So I know some people would be like, oh, that is so mean. But to me, it felt like it was a good thing. I was like, well, yeah, he fixed my problems and he made me like learn how to do it. So yeah, I wish I could give a shout out. I guess I could give a shout out to Charles, but he like passed away a couple of years ago. So he was a good mentor to me. I know some people don't like him that much because you always have that professor that's like mean and difficult. But I mean, he always liked my work, so I was always happy. So yeah.
Well, yeah, those difficult ones are the ones that I feel like people leave with more of, right? Because like you said, right, they're going to be more harsh with their feedback, but you said you it's like you still hear his voice to this day, and it's good, right? Because that's something you maybe wouldn't have if you didn't go to the class, right? Or you didn't go to college. You wouldn't really have a mentor, and it really helps to have someone who can, like you said, like tell you like, this is what you did wrong, you could change this, because then you change it and then you work on anything else, and you always have that in mind, like, oh, I need to change this or make sure I don't do that again, and it works out great. So
I will say, I don't know how other people who've done it without the school route, because I mean, trying to get into like a design community is always like, to me, I've always been able to because I've been around people and I've like known people, and like, I want to say I'm not that social, but now that I talk about it,
yeah, I think you are. Yeah.
So they'd be like, Jessica, you're social. But like, no, I'm not social. I just sometimes I talk. So it's been easy for me to like be able to find people in the design community to talk to and like to have people help me out. So I say if you're doing it by yourself, obviously try to find other designers that you're inspired for, or like go to events that they're happening. It's always fun to talk to other designers and our struggles, I guess.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you so much for talking about your story. And no, I think it's really great. I mean, super inspirational to anyone who wants to go the graphic design route or just, like work in the arts in general. And I think it's always really great to be able to highlight those stories. And again, like I mentioned before, right? A lot of people think about the 209 or in the Valley in general, and they think that we're not so advanced technologically, right? And that a lot of people might not have as much creative careers, right? Because we're not known as like, the entertainment area. But it's really great to be able to highlight people like you, right? That are in the creative space and that can say like, hey, you could do it and you could still be here in the Valley. It's just that, we're just not known as much, right? And I'm really glad that you were able to tell your story and, hopefully inspire more people to also either go to college or at least, like self-learn all these different programs. So yeah, thanks for being on and for making all the podcast logos that you always do and making them really quick. That's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, if anybody has questions about design, like if they're interested, they obviously can reach out to me. I'm on my Instagram, as I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, I am 100% supportive of creatives in the Valley, and I know there's talent here, so that's why I'm like, there's obviously talent. You guys are just not. It's just sad sometimes, but I mean, there's great people, great talent, amazing, hardworking people here.
Yeah, and it's my job to bring him on here so we can give him a spotlight. So
yeah, I mean, I can definitely recommend you. I mean, I don't know a lot of people from other places, but I know a lot of people from Modesto.
Thank you again to Jessica Lopez for being on the podcast tonight. I'm really glad that, we found the time for her to be on here. And like I said earlier, I learned a lot about her story, and I hope everyone listening now, you get inspired. Even if you're not a graphic designer, there's always inspiration to be said from anyone who has been working in their field for a while and that really gets a lot of joy in what they do. And ultimately, we're all trying to find that job that gives us joy. And when you're in that spot where you find what you like to do and you do it for so long, it's really great. And you could definitely tell from Jessica that she really enjoys what she does. And she's done my podcast logos outside of just doing other works as well. So she definitely enjoys doing this at other times. And I'm really thankful for it. And, I always say to anyone who's looking for any graphic design, and sometimes I'll even suggest to people who could probably use a refresher, as we mentioned earlier, that, I know a graphic designer here in Jessica, and that she's going to give you quality work. And so for anyone listening, if you have a business, or really even if it's not a business, because my podcast shows aren't a business right now, at least as of now. And if you have any other, if you have like an organization, a club, a cause, and you've always wanted a logo for it, or, you have a logo now and you're like, I could really modernize it, then, feel free to reach out to her. Like she mentioned already, she's there, and, she does a really great job, as you can tell from our podcast logo here. And so highly recommend her to anyone who's looking for any graphic design work, whether it's a logo, or if you're looking for a publication or an advertisement that you want to do on the newspaper and you want it to look really nice, then reach out to her and let her know your idea. Thank you so much to everyone who listens to the podcast. As I always like to say, I really appreciate it. And I see listens go up each week, and, it's something really awesome. And I really thank you for spending your time listening to my show. And as always, if you have anyone who you know from the 209 or someone who moved to the 209 as well, who has a story to share, please feel free to send me a message and let me know about them. And we'll do our best to get them here on the show. And just to give everyone a sneak peek on who our next guest will be, it's actually going to be one of my former colleagues as well. So I'm going to be interviewing another former colleague of mine. And he's actually going to be talking about his taqueria business, which is both a physical taqueria location and also a catering business. So we're going to be talking about how he got the business started and also about how it was for him to grow up here in the 209, of course, as well. So you'll definitely want to tune in to check that one out. And again, please subscribe to the show if you haven't yet. Really appreciate it. And you'll find out when I have new episodes on the podcast. And if you don't have a platform where you listen to music on, but you have Facebook, you can actually listen to the show on Facebook. It's got to be through your mobile device only though, but just another option for you to be able to listen to the show there on the Facebook app. Well, everyone, have a great night, and we'll see you next week here on the 209 Journey podcast.